Hello everyone, I'm Dean Kelley with the Georgia Transparency Coalition, and today we're here with Nick Millwood, the mayor of Ringgold, and we're going to be talking about politics here in Northwest Georgia. So, what's transpiring and what's going on and what's the issues in Northwest Georgia and where do we need to go from here for the entire region up here. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you meeting with us today.
Good to be here, Dean. Thank you very much.
Pleasure meeting you. If you would just give us a little bit of background about who you are, and so people that aren't from Ringgold have a better understanding of who Nick Millwood is.
Well, sure. I was born and raised in Ringgold. I went through Ringgold Middle and High School, and now I teach at Ringgold Middle School. And I won an election about, I guess, a little over 8 years ago now to the Ringgold City Council. And after that term, our longtime mayor decided to retire, and so I ran for the mayor position. And I have actually just won my second term as mayor. So I'm entering my 5th year as mayor. And that's where I'm at now.
Okay, well, as a school teacher, what motivated you to seek political office and get on the city council and later run for mayor? What motivates you?
Well, there was a specific instance where an ordinance, a law had gotten passed for my neighborhood that was restricting certain types of parking, and it was an ordinance that was just for my neighborhood. And so I went to the council, and the police showed up to break up my daughter's birthday party.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Yeah, so, and they were very gracious about it. They said, "We see what's going on here. We're going to go ahead and go. This is a new ordinance for the neighborhood." They were gracious about it. So when I went and addressed the council about it, I was told that if I wanted to know what was going on, I should have been at the meeting, which was fair enough. I could have gone to the meeting and I could have known what was going on. But I decided that I perhaps had something to offer our community in informing people, not what was already passed, but informing people ahead of time. This is what we're thinking about doing. This is the direction we're moving, and getting that feedback before we vote on things. And so my main goal into going to office was I wanted an informed public. I didn't like the feeling of being blindsided by something. And the council at the time, I'm sure they were just looking out for the safety and aesthetics of the neighborhood, those kind of things. But it wouldn't have been that hard with just one neighborhood it being passed for to let the neighborhood know ahead of time. And so I thought that perhaps I had something to offer. I was very proficient online and talking to people and that sort of thing. And that was really new during that time, just starting to blossom. And so I took the opportunity to run for office with the promise that my constituents would know what was going on in our city council meetings, not just after the fact, but before we actually voted on things.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's what motivated us to create this organization, was more transparency and accountability. So I think that's becoming more and more of an issue for folks. You say this is your second term, so let me ask you this: what's the most surprising things that you ran into as mayor? The most aggravating things, and what do you see as the important issues moving forward?
The most surprising was how strong the resistance has been to being open about everything that the city council does, with an increased amount of public knowledge about what's going on in our city council. That comes with an increased amount of scrutiny. For an increased amount of scrutiny for me, increased amount of scrutiny for my council. The mindset whenever I took office was we were elected to make these decisions, and informing people ahead of time that we were moving in a particular direction was causing tension and disagreements. It was a very interesting growing process in the beginning that the council went through, and there were times where it was very uncomfortable. People started feeling less secure in their council seats, and that was tough to deal with. These people that I served with on the city council, I have no doubt that they were very much wanting to make Ringgold the best that it could be. And so whenever I started publicly advocating for things or informing the public about what was going on, and they were getting public pressure to move in certain directions, that was not welcome by some. So that was certainly, I think, the biggest challenge, is moving from a we're determining the direction of the city to having a large amount of people putting their input into the direction of the city. I welcome that. There were some that did not, and that was tough to work through at first. It's getting better. It's getting better. But yeah, that was easily the biggest. I wouldn't necessarily call it an aggravation. It was a fight. It was a tough transition, and I think that we're still transitioning.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes politicians, especially have been in office for a good while, they kind of forget who they work for. They work for the citizens, and of course, everything's about being reelected, and sometimes information that may hurt their reelection. They want to keep that quiet or out of the public domain, so to speak.
The relationship among the elected officials and the people who are in positions of power in and around the city and the county, those were not by everyone, but there was a group who valued those relationships more than the relationships I felt with the constituents.
Right.
And it was, I don't know, it was as we started moving through city business, and it became more and more apparent that was going to be the new norm, because I was going to insist on that. It began to be more accepted. It did have effects on elections. There have been a couple of changes in city council seats, and I think that's generally for the better. I am very happy with how informed my public is about what the city has going on, and I think that coming out of this last election, I think that the city let it be known that they were happy with that too.
Well, you were elected to a second term,
yes.
So obviously the majority of the folks are happy with the way you're doing things. Well, let's move on. Recently, I know that you have made an endorsement of Colton Moore, who is currently the District 1 House Rep here in Georgia, who has made the decision to challenge Jeff Mullis in our Senate seat, the District 53. Of course, Todd Noblet is also a candidate for that race, and I've spoken and interviewed him as well as Colton Moore, and you've endorsed Colton. Do you want to give us an idea? Of course, I know you put a Facebook post, but just explain why you made that decision to come out publicly and endorse Colton Moore.
Well, first off, Colton Moore gets constitutional rights. He gets it. He understands it. He speaks intelligently about it. I am very impressed with him. He's a young man. I consider myself a young man. He's younger than I am, but my goodness, he is on top of the issues. He's very impressive, and he's got a great head on his shoulders, and that was something that I had seen from a distance, and so I decided to reach out to him and talk to him once I heard that he was running for the 53rd state seat, and all of the feelings that I had were verified over the course of the conversations that he and I had, and so I know that I drew a stark contrast in the post that I put up between Senator Mullis and Colton, Representative Colton Moore. I think that is a very stark contrast, and I think that it would be a very welcome change in our district. And there's a few reasons for that.
Well, feel free to expand.
Sure. Whenever I first became mayor, so this is after I had served on the council for 4 years, and within the first few months that I had become mayor, my city charter, and I was very open about this in my post, my city charter was fundamentally changed that removed the power from the elected officials to our city manager. Now we have an effective city manager. He gets things done. The council votes on policy. He implements that policy every time efficiently. He's good at it. I don't have. He and I have had our disagreements, but it's not to the point to where there's been tension there between he and I. We get along. But removing that power from the elected body to an appointed official, to me, was awful policy-wise. What was more disturbing was the way in which it was done. We as a council had come together and talked about very specific minor adjustments in our charter, things that were, I'll just give an example. There was an inconsistency in what was considered a quorum in the city of Ringgold. In one place it said 4, in another place it said 3. We just needed to make them match.
Sure.
So those kind of housekeeping things that we were doing. Whenever we had our city attorney draft the legislation and send it on to the state capitol to be voted on through local legislation, unbeknownst to me or anyone else in the city, I say anyone else in the city, I wonder who knew about it.
Yeah.
But most of my council did not know about it. I didn't know about it. The citizens in my city didn't know about it. But there was a change in the charter that moved the requirement to remove our city manager from 3 votes to 5 votes. So theoretically,
Went from a majority to
well, it went from requiring 3 out of 5 votes to requiring 5 out of 6 votes.
yeah, super majority.
I call it a super duper majority.
Yeah.
It's above and beyond just majority plus 1. It's majority plus 2. So what happens now is I finally find it in our charter. In our Municode online, when you pull up our city charter, they updated the software and something popped up that said new changes or something like that. And so I was looking through it and I was like, oh, okay, these are the charter changes all of our council just discussed and voted on and sent down to the Capitol. But there was an extra one in there, and it had to do with removal of the city manager. And I thought it was a mistake. I thought it was a mistake when I saw it. And so I called the city manager and I said, do you know about this? And he said, let me call Senator Mullis and see what's going on, and I'll call you right back. And he did that, and he said that Senator Mullis did, in fact, put that in there. Now, this is something that, as mayor of my city, I'm operating under a charter that I don't know what it says, because it's been changed without my knowledge or the knowledge of the other people on my council. In trying to, after the fact, do something about that, I said this is unacceptable. It's bad policy. The way that it was implemented it stinks. Is how I felt about it.
So when this was introduced by Jeff Mullis in the Senate to make this changes, so it also had to be voted on in the House. So I assumed it had to be introduced in the House by Dwayne Hill.
Tom Weldon.
Tom Weldon.
Yes, Tom Weldon is still there,
Okay.
and he's since gone on, and Dwayne Hill's in that seat now.
Yeah.
But it was Tom Weldon. I'm not sure how in the know Tom Weldon was. I'm not sure exactly how he knew. I know that Senator Mullis decided to put it in. He's the one that put it in. I don't know if Tom was operating under the assumption that the council had asked for it or not.
So this was something that was, the changes that were made was nothing that was advocated by anybody on the council or by any citizens group or anything like that. This is just a change that, from what you're telling me, is just a change that Mullis decided to make on his own, and you don't know the reasons or the specific reasons behind it.
I have suspicions of the reasons. At that point, I get out of the factual base.
This is speculation.
It's speculation. I think that one of my former council members asked him to do it. That's my suspicion.
And it was done for political reasons. Is that basically what you're saying?
I think that it was done for political reasons. One of my former council members confronted me the night that I got elected my first term as mayor and said that he had had one of our constituents tell him that I had knocked on their door and said that if I was elected mayor that I was going to fire our city manager. I don't know if he made that up or there was actually someone that spoke to him and made that up. But that was nothing that I said. I didn't campaign on that. It was, I don't know. That was a tough situation to deal with because I had people in the power structure in the city who were being told that I was trying to fire our city manager, and so I believe that's where it came from.
Okay.
I believe there was a thought that perhaps I wanted to remove our city manager, and it was to ensure that I could not do that.
Okay. That's understandable. So moving forward, what are the big issues in Ringgold, and where do you plan on taking, or what direction you plan on moving the city of Ringgold into for the remainder of your term?
We have a lot of plans that we've been talking about that are under duress right now. Economically, throughout our city, there's the same thing that's going on throughout the country, and so we are taking a cautious approach, and we're reducing any unnecessary spending. We're essential staff right now. We'll see economically how this affects us moving forward. That's a tough question to answer right now.
Well, it is, because with this coronavirus, it's still kind of open-ended right now. We don't know when the economy's going to be cranked back up. We're hoping at the end of the month, but or the end of April, but we're hearing that it could go longer than that.
It could. It's. I am hoping that the measures being taken right now have a significant effect and that we can open up as soon as possible. But that's. We'll see how the numbers increase. We'll see how it affects the hospitals
And what's the effective number right now? The day that we're filming this, how many people have been confirmed with the virus in Catoosa County? Not that many. 11?
Oh, it was 10 last I checked. So it was 10 last I checked. It may have gone up to 11, 10 or 11.
Yeah.
So.
Well, hopefully those numbers will level out and start to decrease instead of increase.
Yes, it's increasing significantly in the higher populated areas, and hopefully people use their best judgment, wash hands, social distance, and take all those precautions.
Just so you guys know, everything's been sanitized, sterilized, and disinfected for this interview today.
Yes. And so it's kind of odd in the middle of all this coronavirus that we do have all these elections going on. I'm obviously very excited for the Georgia Senate seat. I think that there's a mood in our county that you can't publicly disagree with our state senator without repercussions.
Yeah.
That has been communicated to me over and over again, and people have experienced those things. And it would be very refreshing to have someone who is welcoming of an open dialogue, values people dissenting and not agreeing with your opinion. That's very valuable to me. The amount of times that I put something out there publicly that this is what I'm thinking about, this is what I'm asking about, this is what the council is considering doing. Many times people put out opinions that are very contrary to what I think about things, and that informs me and keeps me in check. And that kind of spirit and mindset is something that I think would be very welcome throughout our district.
And of course, our Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, he's made the decision to postpone the election till June, which I think is a good decision. I'd rather see that than, it's not the ideal situation, but then you're going to have poll workers that can be exposed, and a lot of those are our senior citizens that are the most vulnerable. Sure. So I think that was a good decision, especially I would prefer that over the mail-in ballots, which I think is just an open invitation for voter fraud myself. But so we'll end on a nice note here. How long, or an easy note for you? So how long? What do you enjoy most about school teaching? What grade do you teach? I know you said middle school.
I teach middle school, 7th grade math. I coach track, which our season got canceled this year.
Yeah.
But I love teaching. I love coaching. I love my kids, my students. I have great relationships with them. We are able to joke around, but be serious about academics and growing intellectually. And so, the thing that I love the most about it is the kids, just the relationships, and I like people. I'm a people person. I tell my students, if you like people and if you like school, consider being a teacher. It's a wonderful profession.
Well, I admire y'all because I don't think I can do it.
Yeah.
Well, since we're on the subject of education, just take a minute or two and tell us what you think the biggest challenges are in education right now, and how do we move forward from there? You know, your opinion.
Sure. The thing that's affecting morale most in our schools right now is requirements that have been voted on in Atlanta, and they're called CCRPI. It's how our schools are scored. And really the one area, state testing has its own issues. That's one-time high-stakes testing. I've got a little bit of issue there, and I think that if we could de-emphasize that in any kind of way, I think that would be helpful. But our schools right now are struggling because when students have bad behavior, dealing with that bad behavior is being used. I'll just say that I think that it's being used against our schools and our teachers. I think that we are being, if we deal effectively with bad behavior, if a student gets in trouble and let's say they had to go to ISS for a couple of days, that's scored against our schools. Mm-hmm. And so we have situations where students are disrupting other students. And we're having a hard time dealing effectively with that because of how our school systems are being judged by the state based on that CCRPI scoring system. And it's funny because whenever Colton came and talked to me, he said very specifically, I've talked to a lot of teachers, I've done the interviews, I've collected the data, and the behavior aspect of the CCRPI is what's hurting our schools right now. And I said, thank you for just taking the time to figure that out, understand that, talking to the right people. It's tough. It's tough. The schools don't feel like they're being backed up by the state, and it's affecting the principals, how they have to require us to go through all these different reporting things and try to avoid dealing effectively with bad behavior. And when a student goes to ISS, they still get visited by teachers. It's not like they're missing out on academics. But my goodness, it's putting the teachers in a bind, and it's hurting morale.
Yeah, it's disrupting the atmosphere for learning, or the environment for learning. Yeah.
That's it. And you got different teachers who have different strengths. Some have strong classroom management strengths. Some have strong academic strengths. That's just the nature of people. But those teachers that don't have the necessary, strengths as far as classroom management, they need the backup. They need to be able to say, we're going to step in and do something about it. And if the schools are being penalized for that, it puts everyone in a bind, especially the students.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we'll end it there. This is our interview with Ringgold Mayor Nick Millwood, and we appreciate him coming out today, and hopefully we'll talk again in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks again.